Hello, everyone. Screencast today is about the second bullet point in attachment. We're looking at animal research into attachment. Really, one of the simplest bullet points, so this shouldn't take too long. But all this bullet point is you need to know two pieces of research, and the two you need to know are Lorenz and Harlow's separate pieces of research. So Lorenz is 1935, so quite an old study. He looked at grey lag geese. You need to know the type of animal as well. And Happy Harry Harlow, he did research in the late 50s into rhesus monkeys. So you need to be able to describe and evaluate both of these named pieces of research. You need to know them back to front, but you also need to be able to evaluate them in the sense of why the frigging hell are we looking at animal research in our explanation about how humans attach. So there's major what we call extrapolation issues here regarding can you take findings from animals and apply them onto humans who are far more, and I don't mean to blow our own trumpet here, our collective humanoid trumpet, but we are far more cognitively complex than stupid geese or idiot monkeys. So there's already, before we get into this, there's already a bit of an issue. Let's look at Lorenz then. So both of these pieces of research are named in the spec, but they're actually also pretty basic. So yes, there's like a sample and there's a procedure and there's findings and conclusions and everything, but they're actually relatively basic. So before we get into Lorenz, there's a couple of pieces of research you need to know. So there's two types of what we call the name. I guess two categories with which all animals are born into as to whether or not they're developed or not. So animals are either altrical or precocial. And they'll always struggle to say that. Altrical are basically humans, right? We are not born ready, right? We are not born, we can't walk, we can't talk. Do you know humans are actually supposed to be like our natural gestation period is actually about 18 months. So we're supposed to spend about 18 months in the womb. Like some animals do, elephants. That's a guess, by the way. This could be, well, I need to go check that now. Um, Elephant, wasting your time. Elephant gestation period. Nailed it. That's 2 years. African bush jellyphants? What the hell is a jellyphant? African bush. I almost said it again. 22 months. So basically, that's how long they're supposed to gestate. We're supposed to gestate around about 18 months. But the reason why we don't is because our head, as you can see right here, becomes too big for us to be able to get out the human body. It literally makes no evolutionary sense for you to grow a head so big in your womb that if you try to get it out of you, it will kill you. The human race would not survive very long if that happened. So the reason why we are born early is so we get out before the head's too big. But a consequence of that, which is worth noting down, is we are born before we are truly ready to be born. So we are altrical. On the other hand, you do get some animals that are fully developed as soon as they are born, and that is for survival reasons. I would recommend, with a bit of a warning, type in giraffe giving birth into YouTube and watch it for about 10 minutes. It is mildly traumatizing, but as soon as that baby falls out of what looks like the giraffe's ass, falls on the ground, it kind of stumbles out. Within 10 minutes, that giraffe is running. Within 10 minutes. Can you imagine if we had babies that were born in 10 minutes? So again, some of the animals, why do you need to know this? Some of the animals we are going to look at, like little geese, are pretty much, they attach straight away onto the first big move thing. Humans don't do that. So the reason why I'm going through this is to highlight the already difficult differences there are between animals and humans. Should we really be comparing the two? Should we be taking findings from animals and applying them onto humans? So, a key term, another one here, is imprinting. This is a behavior seen in animals quite a lot. So, it's a form of attachment where offspring follow the first large moving object. Grey lag geese will imprint on the first thing they see when they get out of their egg. When they break past the eggshell, they will attach themselves onto the first big moving thing. And this is what Lorenz did in his research to see if animals would. So again, why the frigging hell are we taking results from Lorenz and geese and applying them onto humans? Because humans do not imprint on the first thing they see. It takes us 9 long bloody months to be able to actually form an attachment, whereas geese do it straight away. A couple of other terms which are going to be important for the next couple of bullet points as well. I'm going to focus more heavily on critical period rather than sensitive. I'll go through sensitive later on. But all animals, theoretically, apparently, I think it's BS personally, but all animals, according to researchers, have critical periods for their attachment. So this is a time in which you, and please write this down because I'm going to elaborate on this definition. It is a time before which you have to have made an attachment. Otherwise, you will likely suffer irreversible social, cognitive, and personal deficits as you grow older, and they are irreversible. You cannot. Human critical period, you have to have made an attachment according to Bowlby, which we'll go into later on. You have to have made an attachment before 2.5 years. If you do not make an attachment within 2.5 years, say you were abused or whatever, or had a traumatic childhood, you are likely going to suffer major issues. Now, that doesn't apply to anybody in the class because, quite frankly, the issues would be so big you would not perform well academically. Geese, Lorenz believed the critical period was 25 hours. If the goose, singular, if the goose had not made the attachment by that point, it was basically going to be a malfunctioning little gosling. Okay, right. Couple of important terms there as well. You're not going to be asked about them, but I guess it's something else to be able to actually talk about, but they are there should you need it. Not going to go through that. You can pause the video. Look how cute those, I think they're ducks actually. What actually is the difference between a duck and a goose? Anyway, another point. So let's actually go through the first piece of research then. So 1935, Konrad Lorenz, a little bit of a Nazi sympathizer. I don't know why we haven't cancelled him so far, to be honest, but he's a little bit of a Nazi sympathizer. But his aim was to investigate the phenomenon of imprinting where newly hatched eggs imprint on the first moving object. And he wanted to see if he could be their first attachment. So if he got rid of the mother, if he got rid of the mother, and just waited like over the eggs, waiting for one of them to come out, and they looked at him, would they think that he was their mother? Spoiler alert, yes they did. So he split a clutch or a group of grey lag gooch eggs. He left half with the mum, who he didn't kill, right? He didn't kill her. He left half with the mum, and they were the normal. A good thing to note that they were the control group. The control group with which they had no research intervention. So they were left to hatch normally with the mother. And by the way, these geese or goslings, gizoids, these animals grew up perfectly normal with their mum. They hatched at the right time. They attached onto their mum at the right time. They followed their mum. Fine. They interacted and mated with members of their own species, right? And well done to those goslings. Good work. They're probably their brothers and sisters, which is a bit weird. Lorenz took the other half of the clutch, the group of eggs, put them in the incubator, and basically made sure that he was the first person that they saw, the first moving object. They didn't see their mum. And sure enough, these goslings followed Lorenz round like he was their mum, right? And you can kind of see this in this one just here. This is obviously not 1935. He did this many, many times. Lorenz was a little bit weird with geese, by the way. There's some photos of him in a pond which look way too romantic, way too intimate for my liking. But as you can see, they are clearly following him around like he is actually their mother. So these goslings actually failed to recognise their actual mum. They were the mum was brought in the room, but the goslings were like, "Who's this? Who, who's she?" Right? And they failed to recognise. These goslings also tended to form relationships, sometimes sexual, with humans. So this is why, by the way, dogs hump legs. This is why dogs hump legs. Dogs will direct their social and sexual behavior towards a human because that is who they've attached onto. Don't know why cats don't do it. Don't know why cats don't do it. Oh yeah, I mean this. Look at there. Why is he naked? Why is he naked? Why is he in a pond or a lake of some kind? It's just weird. It's just weird. One more thing I do want to go through actually, just on here because you do have to talk about this. I guess you could call this the cardboard box method, the procedure that he did. He got Lorenz. This is we're talking about weird naked geese lover. He got all of the geese, all the goslings, sorry, all of the baby goslings. He got his half and he marked them with some sort of geese friendly paint or something. I don't really know. And he put them in a box. He put all of the normal geese or goslings in a box. He put the mum at one end of the table. He himself went to the other end of the table. An assistant turned the box upside down, and basically you had straight away the painted geese run straight to Lorenz, and you had the normal geese run directly to their actual mother. So this was the test that Lorenz did in order to see, which you have to be able to write down. The reason why I'm saying this is there is not a lot to this piece of research at all. You need to be able to describe this to the point where you may be writing a 16 marker about it. So 8 separate points. You would need to know, I would say, for a named piece of research like this, you would need to know 8 separate points. Outrical, precocial, imprinting, critical period, for example, the procedure, the sample, maybe a finding. You'd have to talk about quite a lot. So what do we actually conclude about Lorenz's piece of research? And again, don't forget, here's the most important bit. Can you apply this to humans? Can you apply this to humans? Lorenz concluded that the ability or tendency to respond to a fussed object is an innate, built-in mechanism. So these geese are genetically pre-programmed to attach onto the first moving thing. That's not a learned behavior. That is hardwired into their brain to do that. But the bird responds in an environmental sense, in the sense that that's more nurture, right? So they responded. They're not genetically pre-programmed to attach onto their mother. The bird learns to respond to particular animals. So there's a little bit of nature and nurture in there. There's a little bit of nature and nurture. The other, I'm not going to go into this because this is more extension, but actually no, it's not really extension. To be fair, you probably do need to. A good term to be able to use: do we generalize or do we not generalize? Right. So this is the argument. This is the main argument that you want to be able to bring in terms of evaluation. You're talking about evolutionary continuity or evolutionary discontinuity. I would say evolutionary discontinuity is easier to argue. On one hand, you could say we're all built of the same stuff. We all have the same hormones, the same neurotransmitters. You know, we're life matter, right? We all live on the same earth, for example. So yes, there is consistency across all evolutionary species, but I think that's a much, much harder. Don't compare me to a goose. Don't compare me to a goose because I'm not a goose. Right? I'd like to think I'm much more intellectually complex than a frigging goose. So I think actually evolutionary discontinuity, arguing that it's impossible to generalize because of the massive differences. The massive differences. Humans work on such a multifaceted level. We're able to think, for example, whereas geese don't think; they just do. So that is the terminology I would want you to use. You would argue that you cannot generalize because of evolutionary discontinuity, and that's why Lorenz, fantastic for zoologists, brilliant, brilliant, fantastic for geese lovers and farmers maybe, but it's not actually very good in terms of improving or furthering our knowledge of human attachment processes and mechanisms. Evaluations. Lorenz, and I've talked about Bobby in this video and the last video, but Lorenz massively was really one of the first people to start this idea about a critical period. So his ideas resonated and instigated a lot of other pieces of research, and that's a whole point by itself, by the way, that I would recommend using. The fact that the goslings who imprinted onto humans exhibit behaviors such as sexual advances show that attachments are crucial to how you behave in future. That is how important that is, by the way. Attachment is so powerful, it can literally determine what you want to engage in sexually. Right? That's how powerful it is. Right? So if you were raised by dogs, for example, in a weird way, if you were raised by dogs, your sexual behavior would probably be geared towards dogs because that's who you. Which also makes me think about Jungle Book, for example. Like that's the bit Disney left out. You know, Mowgli was raised by wolves, etc., etc. But Mowgli, if he was going to grow up, you know, it would not be Disney. It would not be Disney appropriate. Um, But anyway, it shows you how powerful it is. But remember, there's always issues with extending the results to animals, which is part of the whole point, really. There is a small bit here about Sluckin, who looked at ducks, I think. Yeah, ducklings. I'm not going to go through this in too much detail, to be honest, because this is more extension, but again, the good thing to be able to evaluate. Sluckin debates whether or not you can. He did the same sort of experiment about 3 decades later with ducklings. In fact, he held one duckling back in isolation, let it go beyond the 25 hours that Lorenz said, but the duckling was able to recover, basically. The duckling was able to respond and build attachment. So is it all BS? Yes, it is. Model point there. Right, model point. Pretty basic, but model point. Let's go with Happy Harry Harlow. I call him Happy Harry Harlow because he is miserable in every single photo. To be fair, he did have a pretty traumatic life. I think his wife died in the fire or something. So I'm not expecting him to be happy. Rhesus monkeys, right? Different form here. There you go, happy again. Worth looking at these videos, by the way. But he used these fake monkeys. So you can see too here, this is the cloth one that's more comfortable to lay on. This one here is the wire one, which is uncomfortable for the monkeys to actually grip onto and causes stress, etc., etc. So the central question that you need to note down here in your workbook: what is more important for attachments? Food or comfort? Food or comfort? That's a central question that you have to write down. What's more important, food or comfort? Harlow found comfort is more important. Many of you will disagree because your love can literally be bought with chicken nuggets. But Harlow disagrees and says actually comfort is more important in establishing attachments. So the sample in this case, that is not a rhesus monkey, by the way. That's actually a monkey who took a selfie. It's quite a famous one, and I think the photo actually belongs to the monkey now because of it went all the way to like a Supreme Court somewhere. The monkey didn't. argue its own case, by the way. 16 infant rhesus monkeys, so little teeny tiny cute monkeys, are separated. That was the sample. And each monkey was individually reared in quite a small cage. If you're an animal lover, don't read too much into this piece of research because he mistreated his monkeys quite badly. He's not a nice guy, Harry Harlow. Each cage contained two surrogate mothers. You've got the wire one just here, wire mesh, and you've got one that's got a soft, that was wire mesh underneath, but it's got a soft covering. Some of them, as you can see, had a little nipple that had access to milk. So some of the wire ones did, some of the cloth ones did. But basically, these are your 4 samples. Again, I'm not going to spend too long on this because it's relatively straightforward and you can pause the video, but you do need to know these 4 groups. So 4 monkeys in each group equals 16. You've got 4 monkeys placed in a separate cage with a cloth one, 4 monkeys placed in a wire one, which does or does not have food, so on and so forth. Or they're just put in a cage with one of them, if that makes sense. So pause the video if you want to make more sense of that. What was actually found? Monkeys preferred comfort, as you can clearly see on this little monkey's face. Look how cute that monkey is. So infants spent more time with the cloth mother, regardless whether or not that cloth mother gave them food. So clearly, comfort is more important than food. You may want to again think about extrapolation issues, evolutionary discontinuity. Can you take what we find in a rhesus monkey and apply it onto a complex baby little human? Probably not. Monkeys with only a wire surrogate who had no access to a cloth mother had diarrhea everywhere. Didn't need to say everywhere, but that was a sign that they were stressed. Right, and they were sort of like not eating that well, so on and so forth. When frightened, and Harlow would get a still he would bang on the cage basically. Oh, Jesus. He would bang on the cage. The monkey would run straight to the cloth mother, not the food mother. Again, suggesting that comfort is more important than food. And then monkeys explored more in the larger cages when with cloth mothers. Remember what babies do. Babies will explore out, human babies, they will explore quite well if they are in a secure attachment. Actually, you won't know this yet. You'll know this in the next bullet point. Monkeys kind of do the same. If they have good attachments with their mother, they will explore from the mother quite well. That you can link to humans, actually, to be fair. What's the conclusions, right? What's the conclusions? These rhesus monkeys, once again, have a biological, pre-programmed, innate need to have comfort in their life. If we take that to humans, does that apply? Yes. It's known if you don't have that much skin to skin contact with an infant or a baby or a newborn, that baby literally can die. So you may feed it, you may water it, give it water. But if you don't have that skin to skin contact, babies can actually die, which is why nowadays one of the first things fathers are told to do after their partner has given birth is take off their top and get that skin to skin contact with the baby that's just been born. So it's really, really important. By the way, this does actually raise issues for preterm babies. So babies that are born before they can breathe properly and they have to go into an incubator. You're not allowed that skin to skin contact. So there's major issues with that. Does that affect the attachment later on if you don't get that skin to skin contact? And that kind of says it down the bottom here. So I would put that as a point. A practical application of Harlow is that it has implications for encouraging skin to skin contact as soon as that baby is born, which does have issues. Now, some of you may be preterm. I had a student a few years ago that was really preterm, was born around 30 weeks, something like that, and had to go into an incubator for like 4 or 5 weeks. He then got really funny about, like, was I saying that his attachments weren't as strong to his mum? And I was saying, I'm not saying that. You know, psychology is. I'm not saying that necessarily. So, bit of an evaluation here. This is what I always find an amusing study. This like concept of a therapist monkey. But again, like the piece of research earlier, is something that's just kind of worth knowing. Um, and those are the questions. So that is pretty much all you need to know, right? So you need to be able to describe and evaluate those two pieces of research. There's not a lot to them. In my opinion, this is one of the easiest bullet points because students just, I don't know why, they just cannot forget this bullet point. They just sticks in their head and they know about Lorenz, they know about Harlow, even in a year's time. So this is one of the ones that you will probably not need to revise as much. Hope this is useful. Peace out.